I ended up being a teacher. However, I feel like that was such a small part of my role. I was kind of more in the role of like a friend and a mentor, and that was the most important thing, building relationships. They've been through a lot, and so we really struggled with a lot of behavioral issues. When I wouldn't come outside, they would try to break down the door. Or they'd scream at us like, you don't love us if you don't come outside right now. We could really see progress like towards the end of the year. This kid is totally different than when we first met them. Missions isn't just about like being a teacher or working in the church or just like your job description. It's about building those relationships and being willing to be involved in like every part of people's lives.
What is up, you guys? Welcome to the podcast sponsored by the Student Missions Department at Southern.
We have the purpose of sharing mission stories and inspire others to go and serve Jesus with love. This is Edwin Benitez.
I'm Emily Schneider.
And welcome to Yours to Use.
Today we're interviewing a sophomore social work major.
She served as a teacher in Bangladesh for a year.
She said that she prefers dark chocolate to milk chocolate.
And her favorite hobby is to spend time with her friends. Today we have in the podcast, Katharine Ashlock. Hey, welcome to the podcast. We're very happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Yeah. So to start out today, as our tradition for all our episodes, we're going to start out with a trivia.
Okay.
So how it's going to work is you have 1 minute to answer as many questions about Bangladesh as you can. Are you ready?
Let's go for it.
The record so far, I think Melanie still has it, right?
Yeah.
So let's see if you can break her record. So I have the time right here. We're gonna start at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Tallest mountain.
I have no idea.
A celebrity from the country.
I don't know.
Minimum wage.
I don't know that either.
Colors of the flag.
Oh, red and green.
Capital city.
Dhaka.
Official language.
Bangla or Bengali.
Name of the place you served.
Bangla Hope.
Say a word in the local language.
Balo.
Name of the leader of the country.
Oh, Sheikh Hasina.
A local dish.
Dal.
Okay, a popular animal.
Snakes.
Population of the country.
700 million.
A popular tourist spot.
Oh, Cox's Bazaar.
Okay. A popular sport.
Football.
What do you call the currency?
Taka.
What's a country that shares borders with
India?
Bangladesh? What's a local holiday?
Time.
Oh, good job.
I have 1 minute. Wait, that was very good actually.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
That was very, very
You're
good.
throwing in new questions. I wasn't ready for those.
Exactly, we need to.
Those are tough.
Yeah, these are tough. We're trying to make it hard for our contestants, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fair.
Well, she told us that she might have studied a little bit.
Yeah, maybe
So we
a little
had to
bit.
make
Like
it
I had to look up the
little bit.
population. So
Yeah, we have to make it a little bit more.
No, but you did very good, very good.
Well done.
So we want to start by asking you, how did you decide to be a missionary?
So when I was a kid, I had this like dream plan for my life, and it included being a student missionary. So I kind of grown up in the mission field, and there we had like student missionaries come, and I was like, wow, these people are so cool. I want to be like them. And also my mom had been a student missionary when she was here at Southern, and so I heard all those stories. And so as a kid, I was like,
Where did she
I have
go?
to do it too. She went to Papua New Guinea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she went with
That's so
AFM
cool.
back in the day.
Wow.
Yeah. But then I got to Southern, and I was like, whoa, I have a lot to do, a lot of classes to take. I don't have time to go as a student missionary.
Yeah.
But then I feel like every single person I met on campus was a student missionary, and they were all telling me about their experiences and like, you have to go. And then I went to Student Missions Vespers, and I feel like God just kept putting people and opportunities in my life for me to go as a student missionary. So.
Wow.
So you decided, like, hey, I want to be a student missionary, kind of fulfilling this dream that you've had for a while. But how did you end up going to Bangladesh specifically?
Okay, so I looked at the calls list. I think I read through every single one, and I was excited about so many of them.
That's so great.
But because I'm a social work major, Pastor Steven said, oh, here are a couple that I'd probably recommend for you.
Right.
And so I got that list, and Bangladesh was at the top. And I was most excited about that. I was like, yes, I want to go. But it was 2021, yeah, and so there was still like some COVID issues and stuff. And so that was kind of crossed off the list. And so I started exploring the other options, but none of them ended up working out, and I was starting to get a little bit panicked.
Which ones were you looking at?
I can't remember exactly the names now, but yeah, there were like 2 others on the list. Oh, one was in Thailand, which is where I had grown up for a couple years as a kid, and another one was in I want to say Tanzania. Yeah, but none of them ended up panning out, and I started to panic. But then all of a sudden, Bangladesh was an option again, and so I was able to go there.
Wow.
Bangladesh.
Yeah,
And
God really worked it out.
like, did you know what you were signing up to, or did you know like the role that you were gonna fulfill?
Not really. So they're very flexible at Bangla Hope, and they're like, you know, whatever your talents are, whatever you want to do, like, we can accommodate that. But like everyone who goes there ends up being a teacher. So like if you really wanted to do something else, I'm sure you could. But yeah, I ended up being a teacher. However, I feel like that was such a small part of my role. So I taught for like a couple hours a day, but then the rest of the day I was just hanging out with the kids, spending time with them. I feel like I was kind of more in the role of like a friend and a mentor, and that was the most important thing, building relationships.
Wow. Before you got to Bangladesh, I heard that you had like an interesting experience, like in your process to choose that location and to go there. Can you share a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, so part of the problem with getting into the mission field was that I didn't have a location. And part of the problem was also that I needed to take a certain medication with me. And I would only be able to get it in the US and then take it with me over there. And so I'd have to get like a huge supply before I left, and of course insurance, you know, and it's so hard to get that figured out.
Yeah.
And so I just wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go.
And then wasn't there certain, like, you had to refrigerate your...
Yeah, so that's another complicating factor.
Yeah.
So it has to be refrigerated 24/7, kept at a certain temperature. So like I have to go to a location that has, you know, electricity and has refrigeration.
Right.
And also like the flight time, I have to make sure that I keep it cool that whole time. So I feel like this is really ambitious of, you know, me and my family to be like, yeah, we could definitely do this.
Right.
But after a couple of weeks of like fighting with insurance and trying to work things out, all of a sudden we got on the phone with the right person who was like, oh yeah, I know how to do this, after everyone else had been like, no, this is not possible.
Right.
And a couple weeks later, it showed up on my doorstep in a little cooler package.
Wow.
And it was twice the amount that I needed. I just started crying immediately, and my family and I just praised God. Like, it was amazing. It was a miracle that happened. Yeah, and I was able to go to Bangladesh.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a huge miracle.
So you got like almost 2 years worth
Yeah,
of medication.
pretty much. Like, I still haven't used it up.
Wow. That's crazy. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
You have to fight tooth and nail for that usually. That's awesome.
Wow.
So, actually, I remember you telling me, can you tell us a little bit about what you even had to go through, like, to get to Bangladesh, like, getting your medication there?
I had, my first flight was a domestic flight, so within the US, and so that was no problem, super easy. And then we had to check in for our international flight. And, you know, I had been super careful about, like, packing my bags and, like, making sure everything would go smoothly. Well, I got up to the counter, and they're like, you have a backpack and your little cooler bag with the medication. And they're like, that is not okay. And I started panicking because, you know, like, I packed everything I need for this trip, like, in my backpack. We still have, like, a long ways to go. The travel time was so long. And then I can't, like, allow them to take my medication. Like, I have to monitor the temperature. I have it, like, jam-packed with freezer packs and cooler stuff. And I have, like, a thermometer in there that I'm checking, like, on my phone to make sure that it's cool enough.
Right.
And they were arguing with me, and I was like, I have a doctor's note. Like, this is medically necessary for me to keep this with me. Anyways, I had to put my backpack under the plane. So I just, like, took out only the most necessary things, like, tried to jam pack it in my pockets and in the pockets of the cooler, and I made it to Bangladesh. Okay, yeah.
Wow.
That is, yeah, I think God was looking out for you in that, because you had a lot of pushback, but in the end you made it through. So that's pretty cool. So once you got to Bangladesh, can you just describe to us, what is it like? Like, what are some of the, like, most memorable things about the culture and, like, what it looks like there?
Yeah, my first day was definitely memorable. So we got out of the airport and it's like super hot. And we get in the van and we have like a 9 or 10 hour drive up to our location.
From the airport to the location?
Yeah, and that's mostly because the roads are so crowded and not in good condition. Like if the distance is basically from here to Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
And it took us like 10 hours.
10 hours? Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
So yeah, we get out of the airport and the roads are jam-packed. So in Bangladesh, we drive on the left side of the road, but also the right side of the road. Just anywhere you can like weave in between. And there's huge trucks and like people crossing the road and just like making trucks stop. Like I thought someone was gonna die. There were animals in the road. I thought we were gonna die as well. I'm so surprised that we never crashed like during the time I was there, because every experience driving, I thought something was gonna happen.
Right.
Yeah. And so on the drive, they took us to a restaurant to stop for lunch. And I feel like I had researched, like, I was like, I gotta know about the culture, I gotta be prepared. So I like talked to past student missionaries, I'd like done my research online. Well, somehow I missed that people eat with their hands. Like, and so we go to this restaurant and they serve the food and everyone just starts digging in and there are no utensils. And so I was with Sarah, another missionary, and we're like, oh, okay. And so we just like try to follow suit. But the thing is, you have to be really skilled. Like it's a skill that people learn it when they're kids. And it's hard to eat with your hands if it's just like rice and curry. You have to mix it, and then like there's a special technique.
They don't have like, because I know in other countries they have like chapati or like tortillas, or so it's easier to eat it with your hands, right? In Bangladesh, like, do they use anything like that to accompany?
Yeah, but not at every meal. So it's usually just like rice and a curry that you mash together and then you eat with your hands. And so it was actually really fun. I got to learn how to do that and got better at it. And the kids at the orphanage like to laugh at me because I wasn't good at it. But it was a lot of fun.
Wow, like, I mean, you already said like you guys would eat rice and curry a lot of times, but is there anything more that you liked about the food?
Well, I love the chapatis. That was a special thing that they would often make for us. And noodles. Yeah, those are our staples.
Yeah, for sure.
So Katharine, I noticed that you are wearing clothes from Bangladesh. Can you explain what you're wearing?
Okay, so this is a salwar kameez, and so you wear like pants, and this is kind of like a dress that's split up to the hip, so it's like super nice and cool and comfortable and easy to like walk in, and this scarf is called an orna. And so this is something that I got to wear like every day. So when we first got there, we went to the market and like we got to pick out the different fabrics and then they tailored them to us.
Whoa.
So this is like the traditional outfit that kind of everyone wears every day. Yeah, so it was really cool, super exciting to like get to choose that out. And something about the culture is that gift giving is really important, or at least it was for the kids on campus. So actually my shoes are also from Bangladesh.
No way.
So the kids, it's super important for them to like show their love through gifts, so they would always be giving me stuff.
Aww.
Like they bought me outfits and they would always try to share their food with me or like buy me candy.
Cute.
And someone got these from their sponsor and they gave them to me.
Wow.
And I tried to say no, but like it's so important to receive gifts, and so yeah, I wear them now in honor of, the kids.
So those are Bangla Crocs.
Well, actually, they're from the Philippines, but yeah.
Wow, I got my Crocs from the Philippines too.
Yeah, wow, that's cool.
That's awesome.
So, once like you get there, can you tell us a little bit about the place that you are working at?
So it's called Bangla Hope, and it's a children's home. So most of the kids there either are orphans or their parents have abandoned them. And so it's like a children's home or an orphanage, but it's also a school.
Right.
And I went back this summer and we had about 180 kids at that point.
Wow.
And so we have all the way from birth to college age. So the organization was started, about 20-ish years ago. And so the kids that were babies or, little kids when the organization first started are just now starting to go to college. So it's exciting because everyone's starting to grow up and the organization is entering like a new stage.
Right.
So, how would a normal day look like for you?
Oh, okay. So I'd wake up in the morning, and sometimes I'd go to the morning worship with the kids, but that was like really early in the morning. So sometimes I wouldn't end up going to that. And then I would get ready for the day, go to my first class. I taught like 2nd and 4th grade English. And then we'd have breakfast actually in between the two classes. and then we'd have recess. And that was probably one of the most exciting times for the kids because it means time to hang out with the student missionaries.
Right.
And so we'd all like play games or walk around campus. That was like our favorite thing to do, walk laps around campus. So we're in like a walled campus with a bunch of buildings like the dorm, cafeteria, and school buildings. Not super big, but I mean, I don't know, kind of big. Yeah, it was maybe like if you walked around 4 or 5 times, you might get a mile in.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's what we would do during recess most of the time. And then I'd go and teach my second class, and then I would have maybe a little bit of free time. But any free time that I had, the kids would want to do something. So most of the kids would be in class, but then the little kids and then the really old kids wouldn't have class. And so maybe I'd hang out with them, or maybe I'd do something in my apartment like laundry. We had to wash all our clothes by hand, and the kids actually taught me how to do that. But then they always told me ever after, like, you really don't know how to do it. You're not good at that. But yeah, we washed our clothes all by hand. Yeah, and so then we'd have lunch with all the missionaries and the director. And then after lunch, it was playtime. And so we'd play with the kids, walk around campus more, just talk and hang out, do all kinds of stuff, play board games. Yeah. And that would go like all the way until their supper and worship. And so then we'd always attend worship with them, sit with them. That was super important that we got to sit with them. So I'd have a different kid like begging me each night to come and sit next to them. And after worship, they would have study hall. And so maybe I'd get a little bit of free time, but then there'd also be kids that weren't in study hall. So maybe I'd hang out with them. It all was kind of fluid and flexible. And then after study hall, we'd have goodnight hugs. And this is something that the kids kind of came up with themselves. So physical touch is really important to them because it's not something that they get for most of the staff there. So they were raised by the American couple that first started the organization. And so they got a lot of hugs when they were little, and so they're accustomed to that. But the Bangladeshi staff, that isn't something that they're accustomed to. And so when student missionaries are there, the kids always try to get as many hugs as they can. And so myself and my friend Sarah, who was the other missionary there, we got there before the American director had arrived. He was still on furlough in the States. And so the kids were like, oh yeah, you guys have to come every night to give us goodnight hugs. Apparently this had not been a thing before, but they decided it was going to be a thing. And so it lasted our whole year. And so every night we'd have all the kids line up, or they would just line up and try to give us as many hugs as they could before the dean was like locking them into the dorm. So that would usually last between like 15 and 30 minutes, as long as they could get. Trying to get as long of hugs as they could, or as many hugs. Yeah.
Wow. And tell us, how many kids were there?
So it's a little bit complicated because we always have kids coming in, and then we also have kids that are away at like the capital city going to college. And so this summer when I was back, like their total kid count was 180. Counting everyone. So it's not always that crowded on campus. But yeah, that's a lot of kids.
And those are the kids living there in
Well, I'd say maybe we have like 100 and something on campus. But yeah, as they get older, they have to go to school someplace else.
Right.
And did you have to live there with them, or do you have like a separate house for yourself?
Yeah, so we had a little apartment in a big building that had some staff members and also the older boys. So they had all the girls and the little boys in one dorm together. And then the older boys, they put in a separate building, which was actually the apartment right above us. And so every evening, after the girls would go to bed, the boys would come to our apartment and hang out. And so we'd like listen to music and make food, play games. We like played Uno for so many times. But because they wouldn't get to spend any time with us during the day. So the thing is, there's just so many kids, and they need so much love. And they're really aggressive about getting your attention because they know if they don't, then they won't get it. And so the only time that we got to spend with the boys was in the evening after the girls had gone to bed. And so we'd be up kind of late, you know, for a couple hours spending time with them, but it was good.
Wow.
It sounds like you spent a lot of time, even though your job was like technically teaching, it sounds like it was more just like hanging out.
Yeah, and that was kind of hard at times because it was really hard to set up boundaries. I'm an introvert, and you know, the kids didn't really understand like that I needed to have devotional time, or that it was important for me to wash my clothes, or that it was even important for me to like take a nap sometimes, or like just have some peace and quiet. yeah, it was just really hard for them to understand that. And they've been through a lot. And so we really struggled with a lot of behavioral issues. So like when I wouldn't come outside, they would try to break down the door.
Oh my goodness.
Or they'd scream at us like, you don't love us if you don't come outside right now. And that just hurts a lot because, you know, I care about these kids and I love them. And, you know, I love spending time with them, but also like I need to be balanced and healthy. And so it's important for me to do these other things as well. So we lived on the second floor, but sometimes like kids would climb up to our windows and try to talk to us and like throw rocks through to get our attention. Oh, no. So like, you know, sometimes all you can do is laugh, you know, but it was definitely a challenging part to have to like set up those boundaries and try to,
Wow, and I guess it's also part of the culture, right? And also the environment that they grew up in, and it's hard to adapt to that, right? But I'm glad you were able to do it. But I also want to ask you, this was the part of hanging out with the kids. How was the teaching part for you? Because you're not an education major.
No,
so
not at all.
How was that? Did you have experience before? How did you do with that?
I mean, I've had experience like working with kids before at camp and such, but yeah, this is totally different. So the older kids know a lot of English because, you know, they grew up around a lot of Americans, a lot of student missionaries, and the younger kids are learning English. But yeah, it's really hard to teach English when you don't really have like anything to go off of.
Right.
And so it was cool. I actually learned a little bit of Bangla.
Okay.
And so I was able to like kind of help translate. And the teacher was also there, so she could help as well. But she didn't speak English either. So she just knew some words and I knew some words. And somehow we made it work. We had a curriculum that I could follow, which was super helpful. Yeah, so I really enjoyed teaching. Yeah.
You already kind of mentioned it, but what was like some challenges that you faced, maybe that you haven't mentioned, because you already mentioned something about like the tension and some behavior conducts that they had, like, you know, special ones. What are some challenges that you faced in the mission field?
I think that was probably the biggest one, just trying to take care of myself, but also make sure that I wasn't being selfish in that I was also like focused on them. And spending time with them. It was really hard to balance like who I was spending time with.
Yeah.
Because it was like the older high school girls are the ones that really latched onto me and really monopolized all my time. And so sometimes they'd be mean to the other kids that wanted to spend time with me. And so, you know, you want to reach out to everyone and you want to make connections with everyone. And so it was something that I'd often like ask God about, like, how am I supposed to do this? Because they're with me every moment of the day and like they're not being nice to these other kids. And so sometimes we would have to like, when they were in class, you know, like sneak out of our apartment and go like spend time with the little kids when they weren't looking. Yeah.
Huh. Do you have any stories during your time in Bangladesh of like any moments where you saw God working, or like really memorable stories that you have from your time there?
I mean, definitely the biggest one that comes to mind is God just making a way for me to get to Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking care of that whole medication situation. But I also think while I was there, just being able to see the little changes in kids.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned that we had a lot of behavioral issues with them, and I feel like we could really see progress like towards the end of the year of like, wow, this kid is totally different than when we first met them. And I think, yeah, it's definitely God working and also like building relationships with them, not giving up.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something like, it's crazy to think how someone can change in a year, but also I don't think anyone can resist to the power of love. And I think as long as you love them and they can feel that you love, and you know, being genuine with everything that you do, you know, at the end everything comes with a result. No?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, like, what are some of the lessons that you learned during your time at Bangladesh?
Two big lessons stick out in my mind. One is the importance of spending time with God. I feel like I went through phases, like, you know, there'd be times where I was like really spending time with God and like feeling like I was really connected to Him and He was just doing amazing things on my life and on campus and with the kids. And then there'd be other times where I just felt discouraged and like there was no point in even having devotional time, or I would just feel too busy. And I feel like that definitely affected like the rest of my life as well. Yeah. And that's still something that I'm learning now because I'm still going in those phases. And another lesson that I learned was the importance of doing life with people. Missions isn't just about like being a teacher or working in the church or just like your job description. It's about building those relationships and being willing to be involved in like every part of people's lives. So with the kids, like they helped me wash my clothes, and like sometimes I'd help them wash their clothes, or when the Pathfinders were having to stack wood as one of their chores, like I'd join in and help because that's a part of their lives. I'm not gonna like go and hide when they're doing work. So like helping harvest the rice or whatever, or making chapatis on Sundays. That's a special thing. That
sounds fun.
Yeah, so getting involved with that and like just being there when they needed you, or just like spending time with them consistently, like doing like life with them and not just my job description.
Right. Yeah. I really like what you said like at first about just learning the importance of spending time with God, because I feel like I also learned that a lot my mission year. And it's very true. There are cycles. Some days you wake up and you're like so psyched to spend time with God. Yeah. And some days you're like, I just want to sleep some more.
Yeah.
But when you're consistent, it's so powerful.
Yeah. And the other lesson that I learned, so I kind of chose to be a student missionary a little bit because I wasn't super satisfied with how my life was here at Southern. Like my first year, it was good, but it wasn't great. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go be a student missionary and like things will be better when I get back. And so I went, and it was really difficult. Just, dealing with the kids and being away from home in a different culture. I mean, I loved it. I had so many good experiences, but there are also a lot of difficult moments.
Right.
And so I remember being there and having so many moments where I was like, oh, I just want to be home right now. Like, I'd so much rather be doing school. Like, this is so much harder than school could ever be. I just wish I was home. And then, I'm back at Southern now, and I'm very happy to be back. I mean, I miss Bangladesh so much, and I would love to go back there. But I'm also having those same feelings of like, oh, this school is so hard. Like, I'd love to be back in Bangladesh. Like, I miss the kids. And it's like the grass is always greener on the other side. Yeah. And so I think an important lesson that I learned is to be happy wherever God has put you for the moment, to know that that is His plan, and that He has good plans for you, and that, even though it might be hard, it is good. And so coming back, it's been difficult because like I want to remember and talk about all the good times, but like my experience was also difficult, but it was good, but it was difficult, but it was good. And so it's like hard to reconcile that.
Were there any Bible verses that were special to you? Would you mind sharing them? And then also kind of explaining to us why that verse was special to you.
Yeah, it was 1 Corinthians 3 verse 6. And it says, I planted the seed in your hearts, and Apollos watered it, but it was God who made it grow. Because I feel like a lot of times I didn't get to have like a lot of spiritual conversations with the kids. Like I would talk for worship, or like they'd ask me to tell them a story. They love stories, and so like I'd maybe tell a Bible story, a story that like connected to God. But I'd read the blogs of other student missionaries and be like, wow, they're having so many amazing spiritual conversations all the time, and I feel like I didn't have that experience. But, or even when I was able to talk about it, like it just felt like the kids did not connect to it. Like pretty much everything I said just like went over their heads. Even if they like understood what I was saying, like they just weren't very good listeners. But I had to trust that, even if I'm not seeing results right now, God has put me here for a reason. I'm here to just do whatever like He asked me to do today, and He's taking care of the rest. And so I had to like keep reminding myself of that, because it could be really discouraging where it's like, I'm here and I feel like I'm doing my best, and like there's nothing, but it's not my job, it's God's job.
Wow. And I think that's a beautiful lesson that we can learn. A lot of times we get discouraged when we don't see the results right in front of our eyes, right? It's discouraging when we don't see the results of our work, of our mission, of everything of what we're doing there. But sometimes we just have to remind ourselves that we don't need like a big story, we don't need like a big miracle in order for us to feel that we are being used by God. Sometimes we're just there to plant seeds. At the end we're gonna see maybe those results in heaven, and hopefully, and I am sure that a lot of those kids are gonna be there in heaven.
I hope so. Yeah. And the encouraging thing is that I'm still in contact with some of them.
Oh, that's
Like
awesome.
I get to call them sometimes, and they keep asking me to come back and visit. I was able to go back and visit this summer, and so I feel like God has made a way for us to keep those relationships alive, and so I hope that will also continue to plant seeds and be a blessing.
To end, what would you say to someone who's maybe on the fence or considering doing missions? What advice would you give to that person?
I'd say that staying connected with God is the most important thing, and being willing to get involved in life with people. Being able to build those relationships is the most important thing.
I like how you say that, because I think it really ties in. There's just a strong theme in what you're saying. Just saying, like, the Bible verse about, planting the seeds and God's the one who makes it grow, and you talking about the importance of just being connected with God and then doing life with people. It's not necessarily that you have to do this checklist of all these amazing things, but it's just simply being connected and then to God and then being with people. So I really appreciate that message, because I think it's so relevant to those who are in the mission field, those who are considering it, and also just to everyday people wherever we are, in whatever situations we're in. So thank you so much for all the wisdom that you have to share. I really appreciate it.
And Katharine, we want to finish this podcast with a special gift that we have for you, because you came to the podcast and to share your story. And what do we have, Emily?
So I did some research, and I heard that you guys loved eating dried mangoes in Bangladesh.
Oh my goodness, we did.
So we got you some regular and spicy.
Spicy, thank you so much. I will enjoy these very much.
I'm sure those are not the same ones that you have in Bangladesh, but we hope that when you get to eat them and enjoy them, that you can remember those beautiful times that you had there.
Thank you.
And remember that your mission is not over, that we still can do a lot of things here, and that we are still missionaries even when we're back at Southern. So thank you so much for being in the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode today, please share it with friends or people you think who would enjoy listening.
And remember that God doesn't call the qualified, but He qualifies the call. Stay tuned for the next episode.